Hi friends, Liquidy here for another episode of the Travel Gluten Free Podcast. Thanks for coming back for another episode on the Travel Gluten Free Podcast. And if you're new, welcome. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of this episode, and definitely go back and check out some of my other episodes. We are currently in season 9, and today's episode is gluten-free food outside the country. And we're going to be talking about when you're buying your food, their product ingredients, using Equal Eats card, taking food that does not contain liquids on the airplane, and packing food in your checked bag. So we're talking about all these things today. So hang tight, and we're going to be jumping into the show in just a moment.
Welcome to the Travel Gluten Free Podcast, where you can listen in on how to lead a gluten-free lifestyle with more fun and ease. Travel gluten-free is like having a best friend by your side to give you the most up-to-date gluten-free traveler information. Let Travel Gluten-Free be your #1 source for tips, tricks, and advice you can use to safely navigate your next gluten-free travel adventure. Enjoy food, enjoy travel, and enjoy life. And now, here's your show host, Illiquity.
All right, we are back with season 9, episode 13, taking gluten-free food out of the country, or eating gluten-free food outside of the country. So when you're buying food outside of the U.S., if the U.S. is your native place, or if you're outside of the U.S. and you're coming into the U.S., never assume that the company has the same product ingredients in the same type of food that you're eating in a different country, because almost all the time they're either going to be made in a different type of factory, or they're going to have different product ingredients. So you want to be really aware of that, and you want to make sure that your product ingredients are safe for you to eat depending on your food allergies. So make sure that you read the ingredients and the labels, and don't assume that the ingredients in this are going to be the same in your country of origin as if you're in another country. Another thing you want to consider is use Equal Eats cards when you're food shopping, because you can ask the staff, if the food is not translated in English, you take your Equal Eats cards with you and grab a staff member of the supermarket that you're at and show them your Equal Eats cards and show them the product and ask them if it's okay, and they can tell you if it's okay or not. So that's another great way to use Equal Eats cards, and I have multiples of them. I'll show you. I just more recently did a live on my Instagram, so you can check that out. But here's Equal Eats cards. If you are on the audio, the one side is English, the other side is the language of the place that you're going. I have 7 cards. I have one in Portuguese, French, Spanish, Croatian, Greek, and Italian. And I have a formal Spanish and a Latin Spanish. I use them all the time when I travel. They're so amazing and such a great way to have another tool in your toolbox to get safe food when you're traveling. And they're not just for people who are gluten-free. You can have any allergy, even insect stings. If you're vegan, vegetarian, if you're paleo, keto, they also have cards for diabetes and all sorts of different food allergies, intolerances, and food specialty diets. And you can customize your card the way you need to based on your food intolerances, allergies, and dietary restrictions. And they're super amazing. So definitely use the link in the show notes below to get 10% off your Equal Eats cards today. Another thing you want to do is take food that does not contain liquids on your carry-on or in your checked bag. In my checked bag, I will sometimes put a note saying like, hey, I have food allergies and that's why I have food in here. But I always put everything in my checked bag or in my carry-on. If it's a suitcase, I always put everything in cubes, because the packing cubes are so much easier to keep stuff organized, and most of my food will be in one cube. And you just have to, make sure you bring a suitcase that's big enough if you're carrying a lot of food with you, and make sure it's under the 60-pound weight limit, because they will make you take stuff out, and you don't want to have to be giving up stuff at the airport. I just went to TJ Maxx and got a simple luggage scale, which is just kind of like you just hang your luggage on the end of it, and it tells you how much you weigh, how much your luggage weighs. Another thing you can do is just, get on the scale, and then step off, get on the scale with your luggage and see what the weight difference is. Make sure you weigh yourself at that moment. Don't depend on what you weighed a week ago or 2 weeks ago, because our body weight can fluctuate. You can do that to check to make sure that your baggage is under the weight limit for your airline. And that's usually, I believe, 60 pounds, but check with your airline to see what their specific luggage weight is. Another thing you want to do is you can also pack food in your check bag, which you just carried. Pack food in your carry-on. Make sure you don't have liquids that exceed the TSA amount of I think it's 3.5 ounces. And just make sure that if you do, you drink it before you go through that TSA line, because they will make you pitch it. A lot of times when I'm going through the TSA line, I will pack everything in a double Ziploc bag, which I mentioned on many other episodes. And I'll put that in my backpack, and then I take that out and I put it in a separate container, because food almost always gets tagged when you go through the TSA line anymore. So that way they can just visually see, oh, this is food. It's not anything that's an explosive, or this person's not going to blow up the airplane. I clearly have many other better things to do with my life than blowing up airplanes. So definitely put it in a separate bin or outside. You don't have to put it in a separate bin, but just take it out of your backpack or your, thing you're carrying with you, so people can see it's food. Also too, make sure that you go back and listen to the episode where I talk about traveling with a medical bag, because that's super helpful. That's the 10 tips on traveling gluten-free. Podcast episode is super helpful. And I talk all about medical bags and how useful they are as well. So if you are traveling by car, make sure you use plastic storage bags, plastic storage bins, and a cooler and dry ice to transport your food. Don't leave your food in your car when you're camping, especially when you're remote or overnight, because there can be bears there and things like that. So it can be really hairy if you get a bear in your car. Definitely never bring food in your tent. You don't want bears in your tent. That's generally not a good idea when you're camping. I've never seen anybody have a bear in their tent when they're camping and be like, wow, that was a great idea. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, using those plastic storage bins are so amazing. And I get the really flat ones. They're only like 4 or 5 inches high. Because that way you have one layer of food and you don't have to go through layers and lose things. And so it's much easier to get 2 of those and stack it on top of each other, and they get one big bin and throw everything in it. So just keep that in mind when you're packing your food for your road trip in your car, especially if you are going overseas. All right, my friends. So we're going to take a break here. This is going to be a quick, insightful, and valuable episode. And when we come back, we're going to talk about more resources to find safe food when you're traveling abroad. Gluten-free friends, it's Liquidy. We know that traveling gluten-free can be hard, but you know what? It doesn't have to be impossible. You can still travel and be independent, have fun, and be in control of your life. Travel the way you want to, even with celiac disease. I know, because I travel extensively several months out of the year with celiac disease. If you want to get started on learning more about how to travel gluten-free, grab my free ebook, 10 tips for traveling gluten-free. In my ebook, you're going to find the basics of traveling gluten-free, from the questions you need to ask when dining out to air travel and cruise travel advice. You're going to find my top tips that I've learned from my expertise. Get your free ebook today by visiting my newly revamped website, www.travelglutenfreepodcast.com. Go to the bottom of the welcome page where you're going to see the beautiful Caribbean boat picture. Click there and sign up today. Receive your free ebook, which is going to be dropped directly into your inbox. Remember, go to www.travelglutenfreepodcast.com. Go to the bottom of the welcome page and get your free ebook and find out my top tips for traveling safely when you're gluten-free. Hey friends, it's Liquidy back for episode 13, taking gluten-free food outside of the country. All right, so if you're traveling outside of the country, there are some resources and how you can find safe food. So one is the European Codex, and that is a list of allergens. I think they have got like 22 allergens on there, like shellfish, gluten, dairy, all sorts of stuff. And how the European Codex works is that it's actually the flip of the American version when we label menus. So when we say GF or G, that usually means it's gluten-free. But in the European Codex, G means there's gluten in it. So one time we were in Austria, my husband's like, look at all these choices. I'm like, no, these are all the things I can't eat. And I would definitely never recommend Austria or Germany for a gluten-free traveler, especially if you're first time. It's so hard to find any seafood in either Austria or Germany. But anyway, so the European Codex, you can just Google that up. And I also talk about that in my book, The Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free, where I, in my international travel chapter, I talk about how to use the European Codex to find safe food when you are traveling, even if you have multiple food allergies. And Europe is much better about food allergies, typically the European restaurants than American restaurants are. But you still have to ask all the questions and definitely bring your Equal Eats cards to help you with navigating that journey as well. All right. Find Me Gluten-Free app works worldwide. So you can download the free version. I have the paid version because I travel a lot, and it's super helpful because one of the great filters on the paid version is the Open Now. And of course, it depends on if people are updating the app. but you can see what is open now if you're just looking for dinner, because a lot of cafes, bakeries are not open for dinner. And so it's really helpful, the paid version, especially if you travel a lot. But you can put in, if you know where you're going ahead of time, which usually most people do, like I will be traveling to Dubrovnik, Croatia. So by the time this airs, I probably would have already been there and come back. One of the things I know, I'll be there in the port for like 14 hours. So I can go on the Find Me Gluten Free app, put in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and then I can actually make a saved list in the Find Me Gluten Free app with all the restaurants that are gluten free in the area that I'm going to be at. And so that's super helpful because I can look ahead of time and see what gluten free options are safe in that area at that time. And so then I can plan ahead of time and I know what my options are. And not all of them may be close to where I will be on my trip, but if I put all of the ones that I think are really good in a saved collection list, you can make it private or you can make it public. Then when I go, I can see what's in my list and how close it is to my location. So that gives me some planning time ahead that I'm using that I won't have to worry about when I get to my location, which is super helpful. Another thing you want to do is you can also look at my blog. I have a lot of really great travel ideas on my blog as well. Definitely bring food back. So if you're bringing food back with you and you find like that amazing European gluten-free bakery that I found in Spain and France and a couple other places where I found dedicated gluten-free bakeries. Gluten-free bakeries in Europe are off the chart. Like they have super fancy stuff you cannot find in America that I haven't been able to find in America. I will go in and buy a whole bunch of food and I will bring it back with me and make sure you like double Ziploc it. You might want to just bring, take the box out and bring some extra Ziploc bags with you, quart size and gallon size, and just double Ziploc everything, put it in your bag and bring it back with you. You may want to bring a bigger suitcase if you know there's going to be a dedicated gluten-free bakery, because let me tell you, you are going to love that and you're going to want to bring that back and eat that food as long as possible after your vacation. All right, my friends, I hope this has been super helpful for you on learning how to navigate gluten-free food and shopping when you're overseas and you're not in America, especially when you're in a foreign country that doesn't speak your language. So remember, get those Equal Eat cards. The link is in the show notes below. If you go on Instagram a lot, you can find the link in my bio for Equal Eats cards to get your 10% discount. They are essential when you are traveling for sure. All right, my friends, I hope you're having a great gluten-free day. Remember to enjoy food, enjoy travel, and enjoy life. This is Liquidy signing off for this show and this episode. And
Travel Gluten Free Podcast is a production of Travel Gluten Free LLC. Looking for a great way to connect with over 2,000 consumers per month? Contact Liquidy for information on sponsorship levels to boost your business. Subscribe today so you won't miss a single episode of Travel Gluten Free. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.